the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. This is episode 66 and recently just hit 6,000 all-time downloads, which is absolutely huge. Thank you so much for tuning in and for the support so far, because this is really a major milestone. Now, if you are new here, please make sure to like, subscribe, and always tune in so that you always know when a new episode comes in. Now, for today's episode, my guest today is Marah Chibwana from Malawi. She's a medical doctor by profession and currently working as a junior clinician-scientist with an interest in immunology. In this episode, we learned that she initially wanted to be a lawyer. However, with the influence of her mother, who is a nurse, she pursued a career into medicine. We also chat about how she started to realize that clinical research is her passion and how she got into the world of evidence-based medicine. Currently, Marah is the deputy lead for the COVID-19 research project for the Viral Immunology Research Group at the Malawi Liverpool Wellcome Trust Clinical Research Program. She tells us how she got to be part of this organization and also about the fantastic research that they've been doing during the pandemic. In September, Marah will be starting her master's program in immunology at Oxford University in the United Kingdom. This process was not a straightforward one, and we learn how she initially got accepted. However, she was unable to accept the offer due to funding issues. She reapplied, and second time lucky, she managed to get a scholarship too. Lastly, in this episode, we discuss her passion for training the next generation of scientists. She coordinates the Science for All Club at MLW, an initiative aimed at encouraging students in primary, secondary, and tertiary education institutions to pursue clinical and biomedical science. So tune in as we hear about all of this and, of course, so much more. Let's go. Hi, Marah. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. I'm so excited to have you here. I always get so excited when I have fellow Malawians. So
I know, right?
With full bias. There's so much bias going on here, but it's really, really exciting to always have somebody who's also from Malawi. So I'm really, really excited. So now a part of my excitement, I think, let's get everybody else excited. Please give a brief introduction. Who is Marah? Where are you currently based? And what are you currently doing?
Okay, so my name is Marah Chibwana. I'm from Malawi, which is why you're biased. I am a medical doctor, but I'm currently working as a research associate for one of the research institutions in Malawi. It's called the Malawi Liverpool Wellcome Trust Clinical Research Program, in short, MLW. I am interested in becoming a clinician-scientist, which means combining my clinical practice with basic medical science research, and particularly immunology in this case. So I think that's it. And apart from that, I'll be starting my master's in immunology at the University of Oxford in September.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're going to get into that later. That's so exciting. Okay, so before we get into all of these amazing things that you do, away from the science, I know you are an avid reader. And I don't know, just by your little introduction, we can tell that already you've got so many things going on, so many exciting things. So if somebody had to write an autobiography, or even if you had to write it, what would the title of it be?
I would say The Rise of a Phoenix.
Wow, okay.
Because I think my journey, basically me personally, but also in my career as a researcher, it's just shown to me that I can be so much more. So just as a phoenix rises, it's the same thing. Like there's no stopping me or anyone else for that matter. And I believe that I am not just one thing. I'm not just a scientist. There's so many aspects of my life, and I believe that I can become stronger and excel in everything.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And I love the title, and I love how you said that it can be applied to not only yourself, but, you know, so many other people. And it's exciting just hearing you having that passion. So let's hope you actually do write this book, and then like I will be invited to this book launch because, you know, yes. I was there. Thank you.
And you
from the beginning, from the conception part, you know, I'm going to claim like, hey, remember that one time? So, definitely. I can't wait for my copy when it happens. When it happens. Okay. So you touched briefly that, you know, you had a journey, where you've risen from the ashes. So then this just allows us to take us back to the very beginning, right? So I want to find out, what were some of the influences? How did you get into the field of science, technology, and engineering? And also, why a doctor? Is it something that you always wanted to do, or it kind of just happened?
Okay, so mine is a bit of an interesting journey. It wasn't straightforward. I never thought about becoming a medical doctor or pursuing a career in STEM. I always wanted to become a lawyer. Growing up, I had my uncles who were lawyers, and they always said, oh yeah, you should become a lawyer. But during my secondary school education, I became intrigued with biology, and particularly I wanted to become a surgeon. Now that I look back, I am not a surgeon. I can't handle blood every day.
Yeah, but that's why you press the line.
That I can't do, but that's how it started. I think mostly I wanted to do something different. I'm the first medical doctor in my family. My mother is a nurse, so obviously she also had an influence in the choice of my career. But I decided, well, let me be something different and add something new to the family. So yeah, they can be like, oh, we have a doctor. And that's how I ended up in med school. And after that, I actually realized during med school that I loved medicine, I loved seeing patients, but more importantly, I loved research as well. And I thought it would be best to combine research and my clinical practice.
Do you know, that's quite interesting that you brought that up, that you thought that you realized that there's you have this love above and beyond just being a doctor, that you wanted to get into research. Personally, I actually only found out that a clinician-scientist is a thing.
It's a thing.
I think, when was it? Sometime last year. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, why would you want to become a doctor after you're already a doctor? What more do you want? So for you,
after that,
so I want to find
after the hassle of med school, why do you want to still keep on going?
It just always blew my mind. So was it something that you were exposed to, or you knew that this is an area that you could actually go to? Because I think so many people don't know that this is actually something where, as a doctor, instead of specializing in surgery, for example, or gynecology, you could go into research, into a more research-centered approach. So I wanted to find out how you knew about that.
So a bit of it I was exposed to early, but part of it was also just from, I think, learning during our classes of what is known as evidence-based medicine. So all the decisions that doctors make, for example, if they want to change your drug, they're going to look at what recent study has been done concerning that drug, and maybe we need to switch you, or we'll need to switch your medication depending on the evidence that has come up. And I think I wanted to be part of that process that contributes to decision making, and not just be totally at the receiving end of the information and all the evidence that has been generated. I wanted to be part of the process. And apart from that, I was also exposed early on to research. And I think that's not a thing that's quite common in Malawi, but luckily I got that chance. So as I mentioned, my mom is a nurse, and she has been working as a research nurse for a really long time now. So during my med school, it should be in my first year, as a first year medical student, I really didn't know much. I hadn't seen any patients. I had just done the basic medical sciences. And during the holiday, I was just at home, and I started thinking, how can I utilize this time well to contribute to my career and start taking small steps to what I want to be. And I asked my mom if her organization, at that point she was working for an organization in Zomba, Malawi, called Dignitas International, which was a research institution, if they would allow me to do a voluntary internship. And I think that's when I first got exposed to research and met other people who were clinician-scientists. And that just intrigued me. And I thought, this is what I want to do with my life.
Shout out to your mom. Shout out to your mom. Also, while we're on this point, I didn't even know that you could be a nurse who is into research. You see, I'm learning a lot that this is something that you can do. Because when I think nurse, I think hospital, clinic,
yes.
So it's quite interesting that there are other branches for somebody who likes the research aspect of it. And I think it's pretty important to have doctors being part of that research, to be part of that process, because ultimately you're the ones who are going to be dealing with these patients. So it's always good to know the science behind it all, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's true. I think that's what then got me interested into this career path. And research nurses do exist. So, I mean, they still do all the nursing care and everything, just that they're doing it in a research context. So, for example, in a clinical trial where you're testing out a drug and you need someone to administer the drug, consent individuals into your study. So that's where they come in.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. I think that's very important. But like I said, some of us are so ignorant to these things that you don't realize that it's actually happening, and these things these people are so important. Okay, so now you've gone into, you've realized that research is your passion after you've qualified as a doctor, and currently you are actually living sort of your dream partly before we get into your master's, because you are actually on the front lines. Currently, you are the deputy lead for the COVID research project for the Viral Immunology Research group at the Malawi Liverpool Wellcome Trust Clinic research program. So tell me more, before we get into exactly what you do there, tell me how you got involved in this first, and then we'll get into what exactly you do.
Okay, so like I said, not very straightforward, but during med school, there was a sort of a club. It's I would rather call it an organization at the College of Medicine, University of Malawi, where I did my med school. And it's called the Young Researchers Forum. So it aims to expose undergrads to the world of research and link them up to people that can potentially be their mentors. So they divided us up into groups. So it's a very big organization. They have people at principal investigator level, postdocs, you have master students, undergrads. So you have people at different levels. So in my group, actually, my current boss was my mentor. So he was the principal investigator for our group. And I mean, those a mentorship meeting where we went to, and he was asking us also, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And this was just like a month or two after I'd finished med school. And I explained to him that, well, I'm interested in research. I want to combine research and my clinical practice. And at that time, I didn't know what immunology was. I had never heard of I had partly in med school, but I didn't really think someone could make a career out of it.
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, okay, so what are you doing now? And I told him that I've just finished med school, so I'm practically just looking for opportunities while I wait to go and complete my clinical internship, which is it's a 18-month internship that you have to go through after med school so that you can get your license to practice as a doctor in Malawi. So I said, oh, okay, maybe I could have something for you. You could try it out and see if you like it. And then we could take it from there. If you don't, then we link you up with people who are more into what you like clinical trials. And I started my internship. That was the first time I stepped into a lab. I didn't even know how to hold a pipette. Honestly, I knew I knew nothing. And it was very interesting that it was basically learning things all over again, how to work in a lab, things that I hadn't really done in med school. And I fell in love with the career. And here I am. So that's how I got started.
Wow. It's so interesting how you find yourself in these spaces and how you always seem to, I don't want to say lucky, it's not the word, but you
just
in
being
the right place at the right time, and also I think you obviously were prepared for these opportunities, because sometimes opportunities come to you and one can miss it because you are unprepared. So I think obviously you had a level of preparation where you were able to take this up, and some things like the pipette you obviously learn
yes
with time how to use it. Okay, so it's quite interesting that you brought up that you had no idea what immunology was. I think you and a lot of people until a year ago actually
yes
that nobody knew what immunology is, but now we're well aware of it because obviously the pandemic, I think when it all started, we all thought, just now,
pass. So it's one of those things. It won't affect us.
Lockdown just for a month and then everything will come back to normal. But here we are, officially a year later. I think there's been a lot of things going around that it's been a year. So you are actually working, like I said, that on the front lines in terms of the whole COVID pandemic, specifically in Malawi. So what do you do there? What do you do, and why is it so important?
So when the pandemic first hit, when Malawi reported its first case of COVID-19, we realized that at the same time that as a country, we do not have adequate testing for COVID-19 in terms of doing the PCRs on patients and maybe active surveillance or doing active surveillance where you go and you just do swabs and all that. But we realized that the number of cases that were this meant that the number of cases that were being reported were an underestimate of the true burden of disease in Malawi. And we know that the first wave didn't really hit us that much, but at that moment, there was evidence that at least 80% of the individuals that would be exposed to the SARS-CoV-2 virus will remain asymptomatic. So we knew that even though the cases that are being reported are low, it's very likely that a lot of people have already been exposed, just that they were asymptomatic or maybe developed a mild form of the disease. So what we did is we set up a serosurvey. And the first serosurvey, we did we did two of them. So the first one that we did in May 2020, we decided to recruit healthcare workers because they were more in the front line, but we're recruiting healthcare workers that were working directly with patients and those that were non-clinical, so maybe administrative staff and people like that, because we just wanted to have a picture of the extent of the pandemic. So we recruited 500 individuals, and guess what we found? We found that out of every 100 individuals, at least 12 people had been exposed and had developed antibodies towards SARS-CoV-2.
Wow. Wow.
But at that time, the country had really low numbers. I think as a country, we had only reported 1,000 or close to 2,000 cases. So we found a seroprevalence of about 12.3%. And that just confirmed that we're probably a lot more people are getting exposed, just that they're either symptomatic or mild, or maybe they're being missed and not reporting to the health facilities. Yeah. So that was the first part. There's more. So
no, please. Yeah, I would love to hear more.
Building on the results that we found then, these were results that we ended up sharing with the Ministry of Health and the COVID-19 task force so that it could inform their policies around COVID-19. And we saw that the minister and the Minister of Health ended up making wearing a face mask mandatory, and all those other measures were implemented. And moving from that, we said, okay, maybe these were healthcare workers that were at a higher risk of being exposed to SARS-CoV-2 anyway. So what if we go into the communities and see what the seroprevalence is in the community? So we did another serosurvey in August on community members. And after that, we followed these people. So we've been following these people up from May until December. So that's pretty much the work I've been doing.
Wow, that's so interesting. It's very interesting work. And I think it's very important because, like you said, that in most of these developing countries like Malawi, especially in the beginning, you know, we had the assumption that we are unaffected, you know, we are in the hot areas, COVID does not affect us. But, you know, I think the science was that because we don't have the testing that's being done, people were asymptomatic, and just because you didn't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I think that's the thing that we're learning now. And I think with this pandemic, we learn more and more as time goes on. So I wanted to ask you, the people who you surveyed right up until December, when there was that the second wave hit, December, January, what happened then? Did you continue? Did you start another survey, or did that now like skew the results? Because that's when I have obviously got family in Malawi, and I was speaking to a cousin of mine, and he was like, "Oh my word, now December, I think it was December, January," and he was like, "Oh my word, and now we actually wearing masks. Like people are realizing that this is serious because." You're seeing it, and at that point in Malawi, even ministers, people in high-ranking authorities were dying. So it actually got really, really scary. So I wanted to find out, in terms of your research, when that second wave hit, what happened there?
Yes. So apart from looking at individuals that were asymptomatic, I was also following up individuals that had recovered from COVID-19 in the first wave. So I think we have a cohort of about 30 to 40 individuals now that have recovered from COVID-19, and we follow them up every single month with the aim of looking at their immune status over time and seeing whether they are still protected against COVID-19, especially now with the emergence of variants and everything else. So I know that we haven't analyzed all the data yet, but even in that cohort where people had been infected with COVID-19 in the first wave, in the second wave, firstly, there was some work at MLW that was done by MLW that showed that we also had the new variant that was first discovered in South Africa circulating, and some people that had recovered from COVID-19 in the first wave did get reinfected during the second wave.
That's quite interesting. That's really, really interesting. And I'm sure we can't wait to see when you have the data analyzed to see how that impact for the second wave is. And Marah, we can just hear in your voice how well informed and how excited you are about this research. And of course, I think now it's a no-brainer that you then went on continue your studies to do your master's in immunology. I always get that word. I always get that word like a little bit mixed up. Yeah. So in immunology, how did that happen? And that's really exciting. Are you going to be going there? Are you going to be doing it online? This is huge. Like, tell me more. Congratulations, actually, by the way.
Thank you very much. Again, it was, I think in 2019, MLW is, as much as it's a research institution, it's also a good, it aims to train the next generation of scientists. So at the core, really a training institution. So after I joined the organization, I mean, I saw these people doing their masters and their PhDs, and I was inspired that, okay, I think I really have to push for that, for my goal, and probably pursue a master's in the next couple of years. So I joined MLW in 2018, and my initial plan was to go for my master's in 2020. So I started applying for university places. I also applied for scholarships. And I remember I applied for, should be the Batra scholarship. And they're like, oh yeah, we need you to apply to have offers from 2 schools. So I applied to the University of Glasgow for immunology and the University of Oxford. And lo and behold, I was offered the place at the University of Oxford, but I wasn't picked for the scholarship. Imagine. So I had to then, I couldn't take it up then because obviously I didn't have the funds for it. And I think that's a thing that happens commonly in research where you don't get funding or for certain things that you want to do. You don't get grants. You're not awarded a certain grant. And I think those are the really sometimes the low points of academia. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, I think I'll have to reapply to these scholarships and all the universities again, because I in my mind, I still wanted to go to the University of Oxford. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be the best and aim to be one of the best people in immunology, then I really have to get the best training that's out there. So I reapplied to the University of Oxford all over again. So I had to reapply to the university and reapply for scholarships. And when I think should have been in January, they invited me for the interview, and I explained why I wasn't able to take up the place and what I'd been up to in terms of my career and everything else. So they ended up, I think in February, offering me a place on their course, and they also offered me a scholarship to support the studies.
What? That's fantastic. Look at you, girl, flying high. Oh, I'm inspired.
Thank you. So
I'm inspired.
I guess the first time wasn't just for me. Then what I learned from that experience, that sometimes, particularly in academia, you don't get things. We've heard of people applying for grants 3 or 4 times and you only get it the first time. I guess this is exactly what also happened to me in this circumstance.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you didn't give up. You didn't stop. You continued, and you're like, I'm going to try again. Because I know how disappointing that is. That no, it's hard. It's easy to talk about it now because you've got it. But I think in that moment when you had to sit in it and be like, I have gotten accepted, but I just can't, like you said, with issues of funding. And so many students face that, like people who are bright, who are doing really amazing work, but they just don't have the funds. But so I commend you for not giving up and continuing to go forth in terms of, realizing this dream.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So will you be going there in September, or what's going to happen?
All things being equal, I will be going there because, at the end of the day, immunology is part of it is lab based. So you really need to be there and be in the lab. So I'm hoping that I do get to go there and that things just go well.
Yeah, we wish you all of the best. It sounds so exciting, and you are doing so many inspiring things. Like I said, that book is gonna happen. Like the more I listen to this, the more I'm like, that book is gonna happen. The beauty of science, and we can just hear in your story, that is that it exposes you to so many opportunities. And I know that you also you kind of give back, and you coordinate a science club called the Science for All Club at the research organization. So why do you think this type of work is so important, and in terms of working with the youth or the young people and getting them into STEM? And also, what are some challenges, if any, that you faced?
So I'm very passionate about training the next generation of scientists. And it partly comes from my journey as a scientist and realizing that maybe I am one of the few people that had early exposure to STEM and was able to make informed decisions to pursue a career in STEM. But most of the youth in Malawi are not aware that you can actually make a career out of science. And what I want to do is offer those opportunities, that exposure that I had, to other people. So the Science for All Club aims at inspiring the youth, starting from those in primary school education up to the ones in tertiary education, to pursue clinical and biomedical science careers. So we have a club of about 20 students right now. Some of them are in secondary school, some of them are in college, and we just work on exposing them to what research we're doing, getting them in touch with Malawian scientists, just so that they can see that, okay, it's very possible to have a career in STEM in Malawi. We can see scientists in Malawi. It's not just in the movies, for example, where we have scientists. And I think it's really important that we start training them while they're young. And by the time that they get to a point of deciding which career to pursue, though we pray and hope that they choose STEM.
Yeah, and if they don't, we'll support them. But hey,
exactly.
we hope it's STEM. But you're absolutely right. It's so important, and I think we had this conversation off air where we were saying that when we were growing up, we saw people in the West, people who didn't look like us, who didn't sound like us, and I think. I didn't mention this earlier, but when you said that you wanted to be a lawyer, I also actually wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't aspire to being a scientist, to be quite honest. But it was because I used to watch this show. I know for you it was your uncle. But for me, I used to watch the show, and there was this one lady that I really loved. I was like, wow, this is something that I could be. And, it's visuals are so important. And I think you doing that work and saying, hey, there's so-and-so, there's Marah, there's, I don't know, Chikondi, there's Anne, there's all of these people, and they're doing all of these things, and it can really inspire them to make these informed choices. And yeah, thank you for doing that.
I mean, it's just important that I'm in health research, but I would, even if a a young person is interested in engineering, for example, it's just a matter of linking them up to the right people that can mentor them into the career that they want to pursue. And I think it's just, we really have to make sure that it keeps on going and we pass it on to the next generation. Because why I do it for health research is I realize that particularly with COVID-19, it's really made me realize that at the end of the day, we all have to work to solve the health problems in our region. So generate evidence and data from your region. Do not wait for anyone else. It's not like you're going to do everything by yourself, but start taking those steps to say, okay, we have malaria, which is a problem in Malawi. What can we do about it? Instead of just sitting and waiting for other people to come and provide you with solutions. And part of that is just training up more people that are going to drive local research, whether it's in agriculture, it's in engineering, in your country, and contribute to the development of the country.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a wealth of knowledge, a pool of potential. And like you said, the COVID has shown us that we can't wait for the West to save us. You know, we have to be, there's that saying that we have to make African solutions to African problems. Sometimes what happens in the West is not necessarily going to be useful here. So precisely.
And I think COVID is a very good example. The first wave, I mean, we all sat there and thought, oh, yeah. And we then looked back and said, wait, what happened? I mean, we were expecting a lot of cases, a lot of deaths. I mean, what happened? And we had to sit down as scientists and like try to figure it out. Wait, what is different in our population? And I mean, it's things like that where you realize that solutions that are made elsewhere might probably not work for you. And you don't want to be stuck in a place where you don't know what to do.
Precisely. And yeah, kudos to the work that you do. So as we wrap up, I always have this question where I ask people, what do you say is sort of like your golden nugget in terms of motivating either the young upcoming scientist or just somebody who really loves your story? So you already inspire the youth. So what do you say to them to motivate them to keep on aspiring to be a career in STEM or in your field specifically?
So I think for me, I'll always tell anyone to do what they love. You are guaranteed that you will likely excel at something if you're truly doing it because you are passionate about it and you love what you're doing. So the first thing I would tell anyone who's interested in a career in STEM, figure out which field you're interested in. What are you passionate about? And go after that. Do not be afraid to chase those dreams. Do not be afraid to knock on people's doors and say, oh yeah, I am interested in this. Do you have an opportunity? And I mean, most of the opportunities in academia come about that way, where you just expose yourself and try and see where you can find where you fit best. And
I love that.
Apart from that, I would want young people to just define their goals clearly. So what do you want to do? I mean, you don't have to have it all figured out by the age of 20 that, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. But just have an idea of where you're going and work to find individuals that will support you to achieve those goals and will contribute positively to the journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's solid advice. I think sometimes, like you said, you don't have to figure it out in detail, but just kind of know where you're going.
Yes.
Vague ideas so that you can aspire to something. Because if you don't, then you just wander around aimlessly, and then you realize
and you end up
gone. You haven't done much.
Yeah, or you're stuck in a place where, well, you're doing something, but you don't really love it. I think it's very important, if we can, to really do the things that we like.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you, Marah. This has been a lovely, lovely conversation. I'm going to shout out our moms for this because
Yes.
because you and I know that it's just so weird how it happened. That they know each other from like in their school days, and they've been telling us separately that, hey, there's my friend's daughter who does ABCD, and you should talk to her. So I'm really glad that we found each other on Twitter. And we had this conversation. I really, really enjoyed chatting to you. So shout out to
shout out to our moms who are both nurses, by the way, right?
Yeah,
I think
they
did a very good job, and we owe it all to them.
Yeah. So to everybody else who is listening today, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.